Welcome, everyone. I'm Damon Wilson, President and CEO of the National Endowment for Democracy. I'm joined today by Svitlana Zalishchuk, who is with us from Ukraine. Svitlana is an extraordinary woman, courageous woman who's now the foreign policy advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister, has been a member of Parliament. She's on the steering committee of the World Movement for Democracy with the secretary here at NED headquarters. And I'm proud to say that Svitlana has been someone who has inspired me for years in my career, and now someone I count as a friend. Svitlana, thank you for being with us in the NED audience today. Can you just tell us where you are, how you are?
Damon, thank you so much for having me, first of all, and thank you for all your kind words. Now I'm in Ukraine, in the western part of it, but not in my hometown, which is Kiev, the capital. We decided to leave with my family because we didn't feel safe. And when I say that, I feel a little bit uncomfortable because so many people still stay in Kiev and stay in their towns that are being bombarded, and they are definitely not in safety. And also many people, hundreds of thousands of people, experience problems to be evacuated because some of the roads are just completely blocked, bridges exploded, so there is no even entrance or exit from those towns. So yeah, it's devastating. It's just a week ago, Kiev didn't differ from any other Eastern European capital, peaceful and prosperous and beautiful and welcoming, meeting all the million of tourists in our country. But today we live in war. We live in our horror movie. We live in a books about Second World War. It's live for us. It's a new reality, and it's still difficult to absorb. It's still difficult to believe that this is really happening in the 21st century, despite the fact that we were informed, right? American intelligence and other European intelligence have been reporting that this might happen, full-fledged invasion with attacks on Kiev, with effort of Putin to put some puppet government instead of Zelensky. But many people were skeptical. Even informed people were skeptical somewhat because it sounded like madness, insanity, and we knew that Putin is a dictator, an authoritarian leader, and he's capable of poisoning his opposition leader and so on. But at the same time, we thought that he wouldn't be capable to do this because this is just beyond imagination. But now it's a reality.
Svitlana, you're right. It's horrific. It's just horrific. And we have seen over and over again an underestimation of what Vladimir Putin will do to stop freedom. But let me first come to Ukrainians. It's pretty extraordinary what the Ukrainian people are doing. Despite these odds, the resistance, the opposition, mobilization. We talked about how you've been such an articulate champion of Ukraine's freedom and democracy for years that even you said using your voice as part of your resistance, as we're doing today. But tell us a little bit about, help us understand, in the face of such a frontal attack, help us understand what we're seeing from Ukrainians all across the country. Help us understand that courage, that determination, that resolve, or even for us at the Endowment, of all of our partners across the country, they all stayed. They wanted to stay in Ukraine and be part of defending their country.
Yes, so, speaking to the international audience is part of my resistance now, as you said. If I could, I would take arms, and join some territorial defense unit. Unfortunately, I'm not experienced with any arms or weapon. Otherwise, I have this urge that I can do something more and something more tangible, something more than just speaking. So I also feel very humble of what I'm doing, because so many millions of people are really there in the streets, and they are fighting, women and men, and losing their lives and their health, and yeah, we are losing talented and smart and young generation of Ukrainians because of this attack. But without a doubt, Ukrainians today is a source of inspiration for the whole world, it looks like, because everyone just got united to protect its home. And many people talk about courageous nation Ukrainians. I want to say that we just don't have other choice. This is our home, our land, our houses, our gardens, our children. Like, this is all we have. So it's a survival instinct. But it also resonates so much, it seems to me, with the people across the world, because it's so human, you know. It's more than just European ideas. It's more than freedom. It's more than liberties. It's about life. It's about of right to have this life and to protect this life. That's why I believe there is such a support from all across the world and from all across the political spectrum of different people. And in a nutshell, you know, in Ukraine, war is our job today. Everyone's job today is a war. So people are trying to do what they can. And someone took a weapon and went to the front, and someone is cooking, and someone is evacuating people, and someone is sending a message to the international community. So everyone found themselves something to be useful to defend our country.
Svitlana, one of the things that is just remarkable is the role that citizens are playing. And it's one of the stories of Ukraine's success in its chapter of democracy and freedom. And that despite uneven reforms or uneven leadership, that you have seen an activated population, Orange Revolution, the Euromaidan, you've seen an activated civil society really help bolster Ukraine's freedom. And share with us a little bit about understanding the role that civil society and citizens have played in making Ukraine what it is today, almost regardless of political leadership.
Yes, you're right. I think that in 2004, when we had Orange Revolution, in 2014, when we had Euromaidan, Revolution of Dignity, it was people's role, it was civil society's role to stand for the freedoms, and they hold the leadership in those uprising against corruption, against dictatorship. And without strong civil societies, those movements wouldn't have happened, really. Today, I think that we have also incredible leadership. President proved to be, grew up to his role, you know, in the history. And there were like, I mean, we have different political preferences in this country, and we have an opposition. But today there is no opposition in Ukraine, you know, everyone's is part of the movement to defend its country. And President Zelensky also inspired many people to act, not to sit at home and not to leave country. So I think that his role is also extremely important. When it comes to the civil society, what I'd like to say that there is a lot of grassroots movement, and you would think that in order to be coordinated, you need a lot of some resources, some institutions, but you can't just imagine of how this coordination happens on the grassroots level. So people become self-sufficient. They just get together, form the groups, and they see the needs and try to fill those gaps, you know, without anyone asking or given a task, you know. It's not needed, just yeah, it's unfortunately, of course, it happens. But you're right, civil society plays an particular particular role in all this.
And Svitlana, tell us a little bit about your own trajectory, because you became activated in civil society, fighting for Ukraine's democracy, and then took on official positions. Give us a sense of what animated and motivated you, and how you saw the evolution of civil society to Ukraine's future here.
Yes, so it happened with me, like, why did I switch on as a as a responsible citizen, let's say. So I was a journalist, I was trained as a journalist, and when I was already writing my thesis of my master degree, I was working at the fifth TV channel. At that point, it was the only kind of opposition TV channel in 2004, broadcasting, really like enjoying its freedom of speech. And then revolution happened, and there was a massive censorship coming from the administration of the president at that point. And we were really the only media outlet in the country to broadcast and to tell people what's going on in the streets when the revolution happened, but also for the international audience, we were the source of information. And at that point, I understood that they are trying to switch off our channel. And I understood that, okay, so this is my right for profession is being taken away. They are trying to like just take away my future. Who am I if I have no right to do what I'm trained for and what I chose to be, you know? And then all of a sudden, I just realized that, you know, my voice matters, and what I say, what I do actually can make a difference. And it was a massive revelation for me, because I never thought in those terms before that. So since then, my somehow work always was connected to some, let's say, political movements for freedom, for democracy, European integration. That's how my career kind of developed. So I became part of civil society of Ukraine. I was running one NGO, which was doing a lot of anti-corruption work and freedom of speech work. And then Revolution of Dignity happened. And logically so, I went to the parliament to continue my work already from a political platform.
It's stories like yours, Svitlana, that have been just remarkable to see how Ukraine's democracy has developed by bottom-up pressure from civil society, and you played a role there. Civil society organizations in Ukraine, over 100 organizations came together recently to issue the Kiev Declaration, outlining clear demands for action. So we see the world, we've seen incredible, the world movement here is taking in solidarity messages for Ukraine, from democracy activists from Zimbabwe, from Venezuela, Hong Kong, in your neighborhood, of course, but in places like Cuba as well. It's pretty stunning. But for that message, tell us a little bit about what the Ukrainian civil society organizations and the Kiev Declaration, what more do they want to see? What are they asking for?
Yes, so Kiev Declaration has 6 requests or demands, if you want. And it is an effort to mobilize international community response. So amongst them, it's of course help for ordinary people, like humanitarian aid and green corridors, to provide green corridors for people to be evacuated from the most bombarded places, because at the moment it's a real problem. Russians, they refused to get people out from those bombarded cities and towns, unfortunately. And even after negotiations with Red Cross and United Nations organizations, those negotiations failed, at least so far. And by the way, this is a war crime. It should be qualified as a war crime, because even during the war, parties have to arrange green corridors for civilians to be evacuated. Also, part of this request is military support. At this point, I have to say that we are extremely grateful to the international community to provide us with lethal weapon so that we are better equipped to protect ourselves. Unfortunately, some response came delayed. We know that We were informed that Putin is amassing his troops across the Ukrainian border already for months, and Ukrainian president was asking for more weapons, but some of the countries in NATO were banning the giving Ukraine lethal weapon because potentially it could have escalated Russia. I hope that these kind of lessons will be learned. But civil society is asking for even more military support because it will help us basically to stood up to numerous Russian army. And finally, I would like to remind also that the civil society of Ukraine is asking for more sanctions, economic sanctions and business boycott. Because still Ukraine, EU, UK and US together every single day buys goods from Russia for almost $1 billion, $700 million a day in oil, in gas, in different kind of commodities. And we believe that indirectly it can also finance the war. So the more painful it is for people around Putin, for oligarchs, for businessmen, the more pressure they will put on Putin. The sanctions, I don't consider them as they have to be sanctions per se, you know. We see them as an instrument to put the pressure on the people around Putin to make sure that they stop him, they prevent him from going further. That's the thinking we have.
Svitlana, we've also been, you've talked about, and we've seen remarkable outreach from the Ukrainian people to the Russian people of welcoming Russian soldiers who had low morale to fight and having them as they lay down their arms, or setting up a hotline for mothers in Russia. But how do you see the Russian people's role in all of this, and Ukrainian outreach to Russian mothers, brothers, sisters? How does that factor into civil society's outreach?
It's a very good question. Today, I've seen an opinion poll that 55% of Ukrainians believe that it's Putin who started the war, but 38% of Ukrainians believe that it's also responsibility of Russian society, which allowed Putin to start this war in that way. I have to say that I see the influence, the impact of propaganda and disinformation on the Russian society. Total censorship cuts people off from real information, what's going on. Many people can't believe, they refuse to believe that Putin is shelling civilians, that missiles are directed on Kiev, on Kharkiv and other places. They believe that Ukrainians kill or launch these missiles on themselves. And it sounds like weird. You kind of like, you think, okay, so there is so much sources of information, international press and social network, and you definitely can find some information, but because people just don't search for it, they are satisfied with their Russian television, and they are not interested in any other source of information. So I believe that brainwashed machine worked so well for all these years, and we underestimated how big role it can play in waging a full-fledged invasion, starting a war, that how important it is. I mean, the work of Goebbels shouldn't be ignored, you know, and we learned some history from the World War II. The point here is that in the end, I believe that Putin will be stopped if we have angry Russians in the streets and people around Putin boycotting his politics and his war. We need to make sure that there is a protest going on, and doubts are spread in Russian minds and Russian information sphere. That should be our aim. At this point, I don't see a big wave of that protest. We see some like just lonely statements from some actors, some singers, some businessmen, one public servant has resigned, but it's not enough. We need thousands of people doing that so that Putin hears them.
Svitlana, let me ask a final question about President Zelensky has said this attack on Ukraine is an attack against the entire democratic world. What's your message for our audience, for Americans, those around the world outside of Ukraine, on why this fight matters to them? We've been talking to members of Congress right here who really go home to their district and have to help ensure that the people in their district across the United States understand, why does this matter for us? Why is this bigger than Ukraine?
This is a war in the center of Europe. This is a war in the 21st century. This is an attack on a peaceful country aimed to redraw the borders of the country, just because one man has these imperialistic, apparently, ambitions. And I would like to say that this is unbelievable, unjustifiable, but also unforgivable. And we, as humans, we cannot allow someone to do this to another nation, to people, because otherwise, like all the charter of UN and charter of I don't know, NATO and EU and OSCE and you name it, all other important institutions, organizations, they're just waste. They're just paper waste. They don't mean anything. The words in our constitutions about peace and democracy and freedoms, they also don't mean anything, and about territorial integrity and sovereignty. This is our joint fight for peace and justice. And also for humanness, that's why I think that it's not just Ukraine cause. This is not just Ukraine's war. It's despite the fact that people don't want to hear that because it's so scary that this is World War III. I think that it is already World War III, because in the end, this assault happened on Ukraine because Putin doesn't want Europeanization. He doesn't want democracy to be extended to the post-Soviet Union area, because he believes that these countries are just his satellites and the gray zone that he can do whatever he wants. So that's why I believe that this is not war between Russia and Ukraine. This is Russia's war against the world, against the democracy in the world. So that's why people have to stand with Ukraine.
Svitlana, thank you so much. Thank you for taking some time out in a really difficult situation from Ukraine to be with us, to share this with our audience. We're so proud to have you as a partner involved with the World Movement for Democracy. And we look forward to staying in touch. The fight for freedom today, the epicenter of that struggle is in Ukraine, and freedoms in all of the free world are being determined in Ukraine today. So we're proud that the Endowment, that we have been partners of Ukrainian people and civil society organizations since 1989, and we are resolved to be there by your side in your continuing struggle. So thank you for being with us, Svitlana.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all your support.